Hey everyone, Jason here. I have a wild story for you, and trust me, you won't believe what my own family did to me. I'm 27, working as a digital marketing analyst, not the flashiest career, but it pays the bills. I was grinding hard, saving up for something better. I lived with my parents and younger brother, Kyle, in a house that had definitely seen better days. The walls were cracked. The air smelled like old furniture no matter how much we aired it out, and everything seemed to be one minor disaster away from completely falling apart. But hey, it was home, or so I thought. I did a lot around the house. I took care of groceries, covered most of the bills, and even fixed things when they broke. You'd think that would earn me some appreciation, right? Wrong. My mother, Diane, had a habit of rolling her eyes every time she saw me. "Jason, when are you going to get a real job?" she'd say, like clockwork. It didn't matter how hard I worked if I wasn't a doctor, lawyer, or something that sounded fancy. It wasn't good enough for her. Kyle, my younger brother, was 25 and social media famous. He acted like a celebrity at home, barely lifting a finger while I picked up the slack. And somehow, my parents seemed completely fine with that. Despite everything, I was looking forward to my birthday. I had saved up and bought myself a cake from this amazing bakery downtown. It wasn't much, but I thought maybe, just maybe, we could have a nice, quiet celebration as a family. Nothing extravagant, just us together. A few days before my birthday, I brought it up at dinner. "Hey, do you guys want to do something this weekend? Maybe just chill and have some cake?" My mother barely looked up from her magazine. "We'll see, Jason. We might have plans." Plans? On my birthday? That stung. But I told myself I was overreacting. I convinced myself they wouldn't forget about me. The day of my birthday, I went to work and got a bunch of happy birthdays from coworkers. Even treated myself to a new shirt. I drove home with a tiny spark of hope. Maybe they'd surprise me, maybe there'd be a little something waiting, just a card, a cake, anything. But as I pulled into the driveway, my heart dropped. My stuff, my clothes, books, and personal belongings, all dumped on the front lawn. Panic shot through me as I jumped out of my car and ran to the porch. Standing there like some twisted intervention were my parents and Kyle. "What the hell is going on?" My voice shook as I looked at their blank expressions. My mom crossed her arms. "Jason, it's time for you to move out. You're not welcome here anymore." I blinked, trying to process. "What? Today? On my birthday? Why?" Kyle smirked. "Maybe you should have thought about that before being such a burden all these years." A burden? Me. The one keeping the house running, the one paying the bills. My dad just looked at the ground, hands shoved deep in his pockets, avoiding eye contact. I turned to my mom, hoping for some kind of explanation. Something that made sense. "Why?" My voice cracked, desperation creeping in. "It's time for you to grow up," she said, her tone sharp and cold. "We need space, and honestly, you should have figured this out a long time ago. No second chances. No discussions." Just like that, I was out. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them see me break. "Can I at least take my things inside and pack properly?" I asked, barely above a whisper. She gestured at the boxes on the lawn. "It's all there. You need to leave now. Happy birthday to me." With shaking hands, I started loading my car, stuffing in whatever I could. I wanted to scream, demand answers. How could they do this? How could they be so heartless? But instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and kept moving. As I placed the last box in my trunk, I turned one last time, hoping they'd see how cruel they were being. Maybe they'd realize their mistake and take it all back. "Why today?" I whispered, barely able to get the words out. Mom just smirked. "Think of it as a gift. Freedom." I got in my car and drove away, my birthday officially ruined. I had nowhere to go, no plan, just a car full of my belongings and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. I ended up at a cheap motel, its neon sign flickering in and out. Lying on the uncomfortable bed, staring at the ceiling, I kept repeating the same question over and over again. How could my own family do this to me? That night, I made a promise to myself. I would never depend on them again. I woke up in that dingy motel room feeling like I'd been run over by reality. My whole life, everything I'd built, everything I thought was stable was gone in a single night. My birthday, The day that should have been about celebration had turned into the day I lost my home. And for what? Because my family decided I was nothing but dead weight? I rubbed my eyes, staring at the ceiling as the events of the previous night played on repeat in my head. My mother's cold stare, Kyle's smug grin, my father's silence, the pile of my belongings scattered across the lawn like trash. My chest tightened, anger and hurt swirling together into something I couldn't even put into words. But wallowing wasn't an option. I had no time to sit there feeling sorry for myself. I had work to do, bills to pay, and now I had to figure out where I was going to live. I dragged myself out of bed, my body stiff from the awful mattress. My laptop was buried under a mess of clothes in the corner, but I fished it out and got straight to work. Emails, campaigns, deadlines, I buried myself in it. Work was the only thing that made sense, the only thing I still had control over. Hours passed before I even realized I hadn't eaten. My stomach growled, and I sighed, forcing myself to step away. I grabbed my wallet and checked my funds. Not great, but I could stretch it. Cheap takeout would have to do. I drove to a nearby diner, the kind that smelled like burnt coffee and had an old jukebox in the corner. As I waited for my food, my phone buzzed. A message from Rachel, my manager. "Rachel, you've been quiet. Everything okay?" I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was pity. But Rachel had always been sharp. She'd figure it out sooner or later. So I took a deep breath and told her everything. Minutes later, my phone rang. "Jason," she said the second I picked up. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" I sighed. "Because it's not your problem." "That's a load of crap," she snapped. "You're one of the hardest working people I know. Look, I have a spare room at my place. It's nothing fancy, but if you need somewhere to stay until you get back on your feet, it's yours." I blinked, caught completely off guard. "Are you serious?" "Of course I'm serious," she said. "You're not alone in this." For the first time in 24 hours, I felt something other than anger and exhaustion. Relief. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't even know how to repay you. Don't worry about that right now. Just come over when you're ready." I hung up, staring at my phone in disbelief. My own family had thrown me out like garbage, yet here was Rachel, offering me a place without hesitation. Maybe blood didn't define family after all. I grabbed my food and drove back to the motel. That night, as I packed my things into my car for the second time in 2 days, I made another promise to myself. I was never going to let anyone have that kind of power over me again. Rachel's spare room was small but clean. A bed, a desk, a window that let in the morning light. It was more than enough. More than I had before. The first night there, I sat on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. I should have felt at peace, but my mind wouldn't shut off. The words my mother had said, the way my father wouldn't even look at me, the smugness in Kyle's voice, it all kept replaying in my head. I kept waiting for a text, a call, something to tell me they regretted it, that they'd made a mistake, but nothing came. They weren't sorry. That realization stung more than anything. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I threw myself into work. Rachel wasn't kidding when she said she'd push me. She started giving me bigger projects, ones that actually challenged me. At first, I thought she was just being kind, but then I realized she wasn't offering handouts. She believed in me. She saw potential where my own family only saw failure. I also started freelancing on the side. Late nights turned into early mornings, my laptop glowing in the dark as I took on extra projects. Every dollar I earned was another step toward my independence. Some nights, I'd find myself staring at my phone, wondering if they'd ever reach out. I hated that part of me still wanted them to. Then, out of nowhere, Kyle called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello? Jason," he said, his voice unusually hesitant. I leaned back in my chair. "Kyle," a long pause. Then, "I need your help." I almost laughed. "Help? You mean like how you guys helped me?" He sighed. "Look, it's not about that, it's Mom and Dad. Things have been rough. Dad lost his job and Mom's spending is out of control. They're in serious financial trouble." There it was, the real reason he called. Not to apologize. Not because they missed me, because they needed something. I clenched my jaw. "So, let me get this straight. You guys threw me out, made it clear I was nothing to you, and now you want my help? Kyle was quiet for a moment. Then, in a voice softer than I'd ever heard, he said, Jason, we're family. I closed my eyes, a bitter laugh escaping before I could stop it. Family? Kyle, family doesn't do what you did to me. Family doesn't abandon each other when it's convenient. I know, he admitted. But I don't know what else to do. I wanted to feel something for him. Maybe a year ago, I would have. But now, I don't know what to tell you, I said, my voice cold. You made it clear I wasn't part of the family anymore. I hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Hanging up on Kyle should have felt like a victory, but all I felt was nothing. No guilt, no anger, just emptiness. A long time ago, I would have jumped at the chance to be needed by them, to prove my worth. But now, I was done. I leaned back in my chair, staring at my phone. The call lasted less than 5 minutes, yet it was enough to confirm everything I already knew. They didn't regret what they'd done. They weren't sorry. They just needed me because their world was crumbling, and I was the only one stable enough to help. Not my problem. I exhaled, tossing my phone onto the desk. I had more important things to focus on. My work was picking up, and for the first time in my life, I was making enough money to start looking for my own place. Rachel had been more than generous, but I didn't want to overstay my welcome. I wanted something that was mine. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into work harder than ever. Every late night, every extra project, every bit of exhaustion, it was all fuel. I wasn't just working to survive anymore. I was working to build something real. Then I found it. A small one-bedroom apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but clean, quiet, and most importantly, mine. Signing that lease felt surreal. I had spent years being treated like I wasn't capable of standing on my own. Yet here I was, doing exactly that. Moving day came fast. Rachel hugged me before I left, telling me she was proud. That meant more to me than I could say. The first night in my apartment, I sat on the floor, surrounded by unopened boxes, just taking it all in. No yelling, no passive-aggressive comments, no expectations weighing me down. Just silence. Just peace. I had made it. Weeks passed, and life settled into a steady rhythm. I worked hard, saved my money, and, for the first time, actually enjoyed my life. I went out more, reconnected with old friends, even started hitting the gym. I wasn't just existing anymore. I was living. Then, one afternoon, as I was deep in work, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. It's urgent. Mom, I stared at the screen. My hands clenched. I should have ignored it. I knew nothing good could come from entertaining whatever urgent thing she had to say. But against my better judgment, I texted back. About what? The reply came almost instantly. We are coming over. My stomach dropped. Coming over? I scrambled to check my security camera feed, and sure enough, there they were. My mother, my father, and Kyle, standing at my doorstep like they had every right to be there. A cold rage settled in my chest. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm before opening the door. My mother didn't even wait for me to speak. She swept past me into my living room like she owned the place, her eyes scanning the space as if she were inspecting it. Wow, Jason, you've really done well for yourself, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Kyle followed, looking more awkward than usual. My father shuffled in last, avoiding eye contact, hands shoved deep in his pockets. I crossed my arms. What do you want? My mother sighed dramatically, sitting down on my couch like she belonged there. We need to talk about living arrangements. I blinked. Excuse me? My father finally spoke, his voice hesitant. We think it would be best if we all lived together again. You know, as a family. I almost laughed. Almost. You're joking, right? My mother's expression darkened. Not at all, Jason. We've discussed it, and we think it's time to reunite as a family. I let out a slow breath, barely containing my anger. After you threw me out like garbage, now you want to move in with me? You think I forgot? Kyle finally spoke up. Come on, man. Don't be dramatic. That's in the past. I clenched my jaw. The past? You kicked me out on my birthday. You left me with nothing. And now that you're struggling, you suddenly want to be a family again? My mother's tone turned icy. We gave you the push you needed, Jason. Look at you now, you're successful. You should be thanking us." That was it. That was the moment I realized there was nothing left to salvage. I took a step forward, my voice steady. "You didn't push me. You abandoned me. And now you want to claim credit for my success? You must be out of your mind." My father tried again. "Be reasonable, son. Things are difficult for us right now. And you have plenty of space here," I cut him off. "Let me be clear. You are not living here, ever. I don't owe you anything." My mother's eyes narrowed. "You ungrateful brat. After everything we've done for you," I laughed bitterly. "What have you done for me, exactly? Besides kick me out and watch me struggle?" She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't done. "You made your choices, and I've made mine. Now get out." Her face twisted with fury. My father sighed in defeat. Kyle just shook his head. As they stood to leave, my mother turned back, her voice low and threatening. "If you won't help us willingly, we'll find another way." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that a threat?" "Think of it as a warning," she said, then walked out the door. I stood there, my heart pounding as I watched them disappear down the hallway. I should have felt relieved. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Sure enough, a few days later, I got a call from Ethan, one of my oldest friends, and, conveniently, a lawyer. "Hey, Jason, got a minute?" "Yeah, what's up?" I asked. Though my gut already told me it wasn't good, I did some digging, he said. "Your parents are in serious trouble. Tax issues, debts. It's worse than I thought." I exhaled sharply. "And let me guess, they were hoping to move in with me to avoid it?" "Looks that way. But there's more. Jason, they're talking about taking legal action against you." I nearly dropped my phone. "For what?" "They're claiming you owe them support, that you abandoned them when they needed you most." I stared out the window, anger bubbling under my skin. "They kicked me out on my birthday," Ethan sighed. "I know. But they're desperate, and desperate people do stupid things." I ran a hand through my hair. "So what do I do? For starters, get a restraining order and prepare for a fight." I closed my eyes. Of course it wasn't over. Of course they wouldn't just leave me alone. But this time, I wasn't the weak, desperate person they had abandoned. This time, I was ready. I sat in silence, gripping my phone as Ethan's words settled in. "They're claiming you owe them support." The sheer audacity of it made my blood boil. They had thrown me out without a second thought. But now that they were drowning in their own mess, they wanted me to be their lifeline? Not happening. "Jason, I know this is a lot, but we need to act fast," Ethan said. "They're desperate, which means they're dangerous." I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temple. "Okay, what's our first move?" "Restraining order," he said immediately. "We have enough to justify it, the sudden appearance at your home, the implied threat from your mother, their financial desperation. The sooner we file it, the better." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Do it." "And Jason?" he added. "Cut all contact. No texts, no calls, nothing. Any response from you can be twisted against you." "Got it." Hanging up, I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, exhaustion, and an underlying sense of disappointment. A part of me had still hoped, deep down, that they'd come to their senses, that maybe, just maybe, they'd see how messed up this all was. But no, they weren't looking for reconciliation. They were looking for a paycheck. I wasn't about to be their bank account. The next few days were tense. Ethan worked quickly, gathering evidence, filing the necessary paperwork. Meanwhile, I braced myself for whatever stunt my family would pull next. And sure enough, it didn't take long. It started small random people from my past, suddenly reaching out. Old family friends, distant relatives, even ex-coworkers I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, Jason, heard you're doing great. Let's catch up." Translation? My family was spreading their own twisted version of the story, painting themselves as the victims, while I was the cold, ungrateful son who abandoned them in their time of need. I ignored every message. Then, my mother escalated things, a knock at my door. I checked the security camera and, sure enough, there she was standing outside my apartment, arms crossed, looking as if she had every right to be there. I debated not answering, but I knew she wouldn't leave easily. Opening the door just a crack, I kept my expression neutral. "What do you want?" she sighed, shaking her head. "Jason, this is ridiculous. We're family. We shouldn't be fighting like this." I almost laughed. "Is that what we're calling it now? fighting? Because last I checked, you threw me out like garbage." Her expression didn't even flinch. "We did what we had to do. And now, you need to do what's right. We're struggling, Jason. Your father lost his job. The bills are piling up. Your brother," I held up a hand. "Stop." She blinked. "You made your choices. You chose to throw me out. You chose to act like I didn't matter. And now that you're dealing with the consequences, you expect me to fix it?" "No." Her face hardened. "We raised you. We gave you everything." "Everything?" I scoffed. "You mean a home you forced me to pay for? A life where I was never good enough? You didn't raise me. You tolerated me." Her jaw clenched. I could see the anger boiling beneath the surface. She wasn't here to make peace. She was here to manipulate me, just like always. I took a step back. "Leave. And don't come back." She hesitated, then leaned in slightly, her voice low. "If you don't help us willingly, we'll take legal action." My stomach tightened, but I didn't let it show. "Go ahead," I said, voice steady. "Try it." For the first time, doubt flickered across her face. I could tell she expected me to cave, to panic, to beg them to reconsider. Not this time. Without another word, I shut the door in her face. Ethan wasted no time. Within days, the restraining order was in place. My family was officially barred from contacting me, showing up at my home, or interfering with my life in any way. If they did, they'd be facing legal consequences. It should have made me feel safe, but instead I felt unsettled, because I knew my mother. She wasn't the type to accept defeat. And I was right. A week later, Ethan called, his tone more serious than I'd ever heard. "Jason, we have a problem." I sat up straight. "What now? Your parents aren't just spreading rumors anymore. They're trying to legally claim financial support from you under the filial responsibility law." My blood ran cold. "Wait, that's a real thing?" "In some states, yeah," Ethan admitted. "It's an old law that allows parents to demand financial support from their adult children if they're unable to support themselves. But listen, it's rarely enforced. They don't have a strong case, especially with the restraining order in place. This is just another scare tactic." I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. "So what do we do?" "We fight back," Ethan said simply. "They're hoping you'll panic and hand over money. But if we stand firm, they'll have nothing." A slow anger simmered inside me. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to end this. I let Ethan handle the legal side of things while I focused on something else: truth. If my family wanted to spread lies about me, fine. Two could play that game. I reached out to a few people, friends, old coworkers, anyone who had witnessed what I'd been through. Quietly, I let the truth slip into the world. I didn't blast it on social media, didn't make a scene, but I made sure people knew exactly what had happened. And just like that, the tide shifted. People started seeing through my parents' lies. The pity they once received began turning into side eyes and whispers. Their carefully crafted narrative was crumbling, and they knew it. That's when the desperate calls started. Blocked numbers, unknown messages, each one begging, pleading, threatening. I ignored them all. Because at the end of the day, I had already won. They had lost their grip on me. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free. I knew my family wouldn't go down without a fight, but watching them scramble after losing control over me was almost surreal. They had always dictated the rules, pulled the strings, made me feel like I was powerless. But now, they were the ones flailing, and it was only getting worse for them. Ethan was relentless. He dismantled every legal move they tried to make before they even gained traction. The filial responsibility claim, shot down before it could even reach a courtroom. The rumors they spread, losing credibility by the day. But just when I thought they had finally run out of tricks, they pulled the most desperate one yet. It started with a letter, a thick, official-looking envelope waiting in my mailbox. No return address, but I knew exactly where it came from the second I saw my mother's handwriting inside. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the letter as I read her words. "Jason, this has gone too far. We are your family, and no matter what's happened, we need to come together. We raised you, we sacrificed for you, and now that we need help, you've abandoned us. It's not right. You have a responsibility to us. A responsibility." That word made my stomach turn. She went on about their struggles, my father's job loss, their debt, the bills piling up, how Kyle was lost without my support, how they were on the verge of losing the house. Then the final sentence, we are giving you one last chance to do the right thing. If you refuse to help, we will have no choice but to take legal action again. Think about your family before making a mistake you can't undo. I clenched my jaw, my hands tightening around the paper. Even now, they weren't asking. They were demanding, threatening, as if I owed them something, as if they hadn't kicked me out, humiliated me, turned their backs when I needed them most. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to calm down. I wasn't going to let them get under my skin. I grabbed my phone, snapped a picture of the letter, and sent it to Ethan. Me, new development. Take a look. A few minutes later, my phone rang. They really don't know when to quit, do they? Ethan sighed. Nope, I muttered. Okay, here's the deal, he continued. Legally, they have no case. The restraining order is still in effect. If they try to take action, it's going to backfire on them. But if they keep harassing you like this, we can escalate things. File a formal complaint. Push for a more permanent legal barrier. I exhaled. Do it. You sure? Yeah, I want this to end. There was a pause. Jason, I know this isn't easy. Cutting off family, it messes with your head. But you've done everything right. You don't owe them anything. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I know. I just want to move on. Then we'll make sure you can. The next week was quiet. Too quiet. I kept waiting for another letter, another knock at my door, another pathetic attempt to guilt trip me. But nothing came. Maybe, finally, they had given up. Or so I thought. Then, one evening, just as I was settling in with a cup of coffee after a long day of work, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Jason, the first need to see you. Please. I frowned. The wording, the tone, it wasn't like the usual manipulative garbage my mother sent. Another text followed. It's Kyle. I know I don't deserve to ask, but please, just hear me out. I stared at the screen, debating whether to ignore it. But something about the message felt different. Against my better judgment, I replied, Fine, 1 hour, public place. No surprises. We met at a small cafe a few blocks from my apartment. I arrived first, sitting by the window, watching the door. When Kyle walked in, I barely recognized him. The cocky, self-assured brother I once knew was gone. He looked exhausted, hair unkempt, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped like he was carrying the weight of the world. He sat across from me, hesitating before speaking. Thanks for coming. I folded my arms. Talk. He sighed, rubbing his face. I know I've been a terrible brother. I know I don't deserve your time, and I won't blame you if you walk out. But I don't know what to do anymore. I stayed silent, waiting. Mom and Dad, they're worse than ever, he admitted. They've burned through everything. The money's gone, the house is in foreclosure, and they're still acting like none of it is their fault. He swallowed hard. And me? I bought into all of it. I let them convince me you were the problem, that you were selfish, that you didn't care. But I see it now. They don't care about anything but themselves. And they're willing to destroy anyone to get what they want. I studied him carefully. So, why are you here? I finally asked. Kyle exhaled, looking down. Because I don't want to be like them, and I need help getting out. His words hit harder than I expected. For years, Kyle had been their golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But now, even he was disposable, and he knew it. I leaned back. What do you want from me, Kyle? A chance, he said quietly. A real chance to be better. To fix things. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I don't want to be part of their mess anymore. I took a slow breath. I had every reason to tell him to get lost. Every reason to walk away, just like they had done to me. But Kyle was different. Maybe he wasn't beyond saving. I met his eyes. You want to fix things? Then prove it. Cut them off. Get your life together. Show me you actually mean it. He nodded. I will. Then we'll talk. For the first time in a long time, Kyle actually looked relieved. As I watched him leave the cafe, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge or proving a point anymore. This was about breaking the cycle. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one stuck in it. I was free. Kyle's words stuck with me long after he left the cafe. I don't want to be like them. For years, I had seen him as nothing more than an extension of my parents, their golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. But now, he was standing at the same crossroads I had faced months ago. The difference was, when I was kicked out, I had no one. He had a choice, and for now, I wasn't sure if he would take it. A few days passed, and I waited to see if Kyle would actually follow through. I didn't reach out. If he was serious about changing, it had to come from him. Meanwhile, Ethan finalized everything on my end. The restraining order was officially reinforced with additional legal protections. Any attempt from my parents to contact me directly or indirectly would land them in serious trouble. Their financial case against me had crumbled, and their attempts to smear my name had completely backfired. I had won, but victory didn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. I wasn't sad, exactly. Just tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next attempt to drag me back into their chaos. I wanted to move forward, so I did. I threw myself into my work, expanding my freelance business until I was making more money than I ever had. I upgraded my apartment, invested in my future, and even started traveling, something I never thought I'd be able to do. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. A message from Kyle. "Kyle, I did it. I left. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. "Me. Meet me at the cafe. Same place." When Kyle walked in, he looked different. The tension in his shoulders, the constant arrogance in his expression, it was gone. He sat down across from me, exhaling heavily. "I'm out," he said, his voice quiet. I packed up, cut contact, blocked their numbers. "It's over." I studied him carefully. "Why now?" He let out a bitter laugh. "Because I finally realized they never cared about me either. They cared about what I could do for them. And when I stopped being useful, they turned on me, just like they did to you." There was no satisfaction in hearing those words, just confirmation of what I had always known. "Where are you staying?" I asked. "Crashed with a friend for now. Looking for a place." I nodded slowly. "And what do you want from me, Kyle?" He swallowed. "Not money, not favors, just a chance to be better, to prove that I'm not like them." I leaned back in my chair, considering. Kyle had been an entitled, arrogant, selfish person for most of his life. But now, he looked like someone who had been forced to face the truth. I had been in his position once. Alone, lost, trying to figure out how to rebuild. And someone had given me a chance. "All right," I said finally. "You start fresh. No old habits, no excuses." "You prove you're serious about this. And we'll see." For the first time, Kyle looked genuinely relieved. "Thank you," he said quietly. Weeks passed, and true to his word, Kyle kept his distance from our parents. He got a job, his first real one, found a place of his own. For the first time in his life, he was learning what it meant to stand on his own 2 feet. It wasn't easy, but it was real. As for our parents, I heard from Ethan that their house was officially gone. Foreclosure. The debts had caught up to them, and with no one left to bail them out, they lost everything. They had burned every bridge, used up every person willing to help, and now they had nothing. And I felt nothing for them. No sympathy, no guilt, no anger, just peace. Because for the first time in my life, I was free. And this time, I wasn't looking back. A year later, I found myself in the same cafe where everything had changed. But this time, I wasn't the same person who had sat here months ago, drowning in anger and betrayal. I had built something for myself, a life that was mine, a career I loved, a future I was excited for. Kyle walked in, looking better than ever, stable, independent, someone who had finally stepped out of the shadow of our parents. He sat across from me, grinning. "So, big news," he said. "Got promoted today." I raised an eyebrow. "Look at you, a responsible adult." He chuckled. "Weird, right?" I smirked. "A little." He hesitated for a moment, then said, "You know, I don't think I ever actually said it, but I'm sorry for everything." I studied him for a long moment before nodding. "I know." Kyle exhaled, looking relieved. And just like that, the cycle was broken. For good. Story 2? I've been with Jen for more than 10 years. We have shared almost everything, built a life together, and lived together. Claire. I was never truly involved in her daughter's universe, which she has always had of her own. However, I was cool with that. Instead of trying to take charge of Claire's life, I wanted to be there to support them both. But these days, I'm beginning to see that it was a mistake to let things stay this way. The planning for Claire's wedding, which is set for August 3rd, has practically taken over her life. Every spare moment has been devoted to obsessing over every detail: the location, the attire, the flowers, etc. Over several months. Naturally, I am the one who pays for everything, just as I have done for years. Claire isn't actually my daughter, though. I've always provided her with financial support. She received her degree from a public university, not an Ivy League, one last December. To transport her to and from college, $40,000 isn't exactly spare cash. I bought her a vehicle, too. Since then, she has been residing with us. She doesn't have a job yet. She spends all of her time at home planning her wedding. Now, Mike, Claire's real father, he is seldom present. The man comes and goes whenever it is convenient for him. The number of times he has appeared is one hand. When Claire needed him most, he never made the offer. He has never paid a dime for her education. Nevertheless, Claire always welcomes him as if he were a hero, as if he had been her pillar of support for years. It is always my father. This father I would always trust. This whole scenario was caused by my girlfriend, Jen. I'm the one that keeps everything together, pays the bills, and is there for her whenever she needs help. Claire has always made an effort to keep her father involved in her life, despite the fact that he rarely turns up. But I never complained. Now let's talk about the wedding arrangements. Since Claire deserves to have both of her parents in her life no matter what, I choose to overlook it. Now, the space could accommodate about 250 people. When you start splitting it amongst the bride's and groom's sides, as well as friends and family, 250 seems like a lot. Nevertheless, I thought I could invite just around 20 people, just a few close friends, and a few family members who had supported me over the years. Here, I'm not asking for much. I intended to invite 20 people to the wedding, and one Saturday I'm out golfing with a guy named Mark. Then, Jen assured me, there would be no issue. I simply easily did it without thinking twice. I inquire as to whether he will be arriving. He seemed to have been asked to solve a conundrum, then responds, I got this announcement thing, but I didn't get an invitation. He goes to his car, looks about, and pulls out an envelope from the back seat when I ask him what he means by announcement. Yes, that is not an invitation but a wedding announcement. The best thing about it is that Mike's name is included as the bride's father, not intimate. The person who supports her every day is not even acknowledged. The man who has visited. It got heated inside, but I managed to keep my face together. But I was furious. When I got home, I informed Jen about her response. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Due to the limited number of guests, we had to exclude a few. My 20 folks couldn't even make the list. After paying the money, I told her I would expect some respect. But she insisted that her family came first. I felt as though I was only a visitor at this wedding, and the entire situation seemed odd. A footnote in the family I believe to be mine. If some others don't RSVP, we might add a few of your folks, she recommended. I was beginning to reconsider everything by that point. If they don't esteem me enough to include a few individuals I know, why should I even be involved? The following day, things only got worse. Another Sunday meal. We were visiting the parents of Claire's fiancé. During a typical family gathering, Claire announces halfway through the meal that Mike will be the one to give her away. She was beaming. Everyone was applauding and clapping, and Mike appeared to have won the lotto. I felt like I had been smacked in the face, and time appeared to halt. Mike, who barely showed there at all, was going to lead her down the hall, and here I was, the man who had been there at every turn. I was shocked. Everyone fell silent. I raised my glass, cleared my voice, and said, I'd like to make a toast with everyone watching. Despite my need to yell and demand an explanation, I remained composed. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I put everything out. I responded that I could now see where I fit in, even if it had been an honor to live among them. It was amazing to see their faces. I would forego covering the cost of this wedding if Mike were the only person who cared. Claire only stared at me with wide eyes. while Mike appeared to want to disappear. Jen seemed a little surprised. That was it. I set my glass down, gave them a final look, and turned away. Together with Claire and Jen, I completed the wedding. I didn't waste any time over supper after that. I returned home, sat down with a cool drink, and gave it some serious thought. Jen and Claire have taken up 10 years of my life. I had paid for Claire's school, her vehicle, and now the wedding, so I had supported them through it all. For what are bills being covered? To be dumped like if I were nothing too. I knew I couldn't let this go unchecked, so I took action. That night, I immediately went to our joint account and withdrew out all of the money I had saved for the wedding. I had not even taken part in the event. Therefore, I was not going to pay for it. It had been years since Jen had a job. I was responsible for everything in that house, even the food and the bills. I called the merchants first thing the next morning. I had no clue how the cancellations would work out, but I knew it was time for her to see what life was like without my assistance. I was prepared to give it a shot. I started by talking to the cameraman. He was sensible about it, luckily. He asserted that he could easily return the majority of the money, less a little fee. The caterer arrived next, and although I anticipated this would be difficult, they were surprisingly unflappable. It turns out that they have a waiting list and could arrange for someone else to go on my date. Full reimbursement. There was one small problem with the location. It hurt a little, but they were less compassionate and kept a $1,000 deposit. It was inexpensive to escape this situation. It seemed like a win when the venue lost by a little margin. I slept in the guest room that night, fully anticipating Jen to barge in demanding explanations. I had nearly squandered $45,000 in a circus-style wedding, but nothing but quiet. She didn't appear to care all that much. The silence hurts more than any shouting match could, to be honest. It seemed as if she had given up, but the storm finally came the next morning, as if I didn't even mean enough for her to fight back. Jen, who was sitting at the kitchen table sipping my coffee, came in with Claire's wedding planner in her arms like a sacred artifact. Her expression was taut, but not antagonistic. She let it fall upon the table before me. "Just chilly," she said, in a tone that was almost flat. "Everything is being ruined by you." I took a big breath. "I didn't destroy anything, Jen. She showed you all the preparations you and Claire had made when she handed back the planner. The decorations, the music, the flowers. All I was doing was responding to your choices." I hardly gave it a glance. I was finished, and suddenly I didn't care about any of it. Suddenly, though, I was drawn to a page that showed the girl dancing far away. Naturally, Mike also chose all of the songs that were discussed. Not me. I think that encapsulated it. I chuckled at the absurdity. Actually, not even a contributing element. They barely thought about me. "You and Claire need to move out," I replied, looking her in the eye. "What I could provide you is important to you and Claire. I have had enough of pretending that we are a family. You may find a wedding elsewhere, I'm not paying for it, or remain with the family of Claire's fiancé. You're not going to remain here." She looked at me in disbelief, as though she didn't think I was serious. But after a time, she grabbed the planner and walked out without further word. I just sat there thinking for a while. 10 years have passed. It came down to this. The silence for the following 3 days was startling, as if I were an outsider in my own home. Jen didn't try to talk to me, and Claire completely ignored me. It seemed strange, yet I was comfortable with it. I believed I had finally regained control. One morning, when I woke up, there were boxes and people moving around. They were packing. I inquired about their destination, but to be honest, I didn't care as long as they were gone. However, a little bit of petty behavior was hard to control. I wanted to get rid of some of their belongings. For my part, I held back. I didn't need to degrade myself to that extent. That's exactly how Genpak put it. She did not want to be in this situation. Claire refused to even look at him. They did, however, go that afternoon. Like you, I didn't want to see her face, just silent. No final remarks or farewells. My shoulders felt lighter after they locked the door behind them. For the first time in years. That evening, for safety's sake, I replaced the locks. Finally, there was silence in the house. And again, it felt like mine. Maybe it was going too far, but after everything they'd done, I doubted they wouldn't try a trick. After the new locks were installed, I felt a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in months. After a week, the quiet started to feel normal. No more stress, no more handling Claire's entitled behavior, no more walking on eggshells around Jen, and no more wedding drama. I nearly forgot what it was like to be free of their problems. Then I learned via the grapevine that Claire was attempting to scale down the wedding. Her fiancé's family apparently was attempting to help with expenses, but even they were not happy about it. Along the way, Jen presumably had burned some bridges. The worst part is that she tried to write herself a check from our joint account the day following the major blowout. Good effort, Jen. Looking back, I'm not happy with how it all turned out, but I can say this, I feel better. I already shifted the money. I was at last free of all the years and too much money I wasted on individuals who never valued me. When you at last stand back, it's surprising how clear things get. I ought to have spotted it earlier. Claire always set Mike on a pedestal, and Jen never corrected her. I was merely the man covering the expenses. I was never really a member of their family. Now I can start to proceed. If one thing I have learned is that you cannot make people understand their value if they do not want to. The house is mine once more, the peace is mine, and I am done with them as if they don't care. They simply don't care regardless of how much you provide. And it is great. I have given it enough effort. The silence did not last very long. Phone calls came flooding in a few days after Jen and Claire left. News of the wedding fallout has to have gone fast since folks I hadn't heard from in years felt compelled to get in touch. One of Jen's pals, Maggie, always one of those nosy types who meddles in everyone's affairs, made the first call. She began with this false, sympathetic voice. I heard what happened. Are you okay? Maggie today is not exactly someone I would classify as a friend. She is among Jen's people. She always sides with her, even in the smallest arguments we have. She was therefore calling for gossip, not for a check-in. I knew immediately away her little fishing trip did not appeal to me. Maggie, I'm good, I said to her straightforwardly. That response was insufficient for her, though Jen and Claire made their decisions and I made mine. I was not going to satisfy her, even though she persisted in attempting to get me to badmouth General Claire. At last, she added, I just believe you should know Claire is truly hurt. She meant not to exclude you in such a manner. She never intended to cut me out of my own life, though. The last thing I wanted was more drama. I bit my tongue. Sure enough, a few days later, the phone rang once more. I kept the talk brief and ended it, knowing Maggie wouldn't be the last to call. This time it was Joyce, the mother of Claire's fiancé. Joyce and I were not close now, but she always seemed to be a lovely person. I reasoned perhaps she was trying to find out what had happened, but not at all. She started straight in, her voice tinged with wrath. You've destroyed everything, she snapped. Do you know what you have done to Jen and Sarah? I took a long breath, holding back all I wanted to say since this wedding was meant to be flawless, and they are now rushing to clean up the mess you caused. This woman was preaching about damaging everything, having not paid a single dime for any aspect of this wedding. Joyce, I didn't ruin anything, I said as coolly as I could. Jen and Claire made decisions. I'm not covering the cost of a wedding I was turned away from. She was not happy with that. If they still want a wedding, they can work it out on their own. She continued on about how selfish I was and should have just let Claire know. The best thing about it is, she actually advised me to still show up for the wedding for appearances, saying that my dignity was less important than acting as though everything was under control. At last I said, look, Joyce, maybe you should pay for the wedding if you're so concerned about it. I assumed that would be the end of it. She murmured something under her breath and hung back. But a week later, Claire got in touch personally. She lacked even the decency to call after all that had happened. She only texted me, and to be honest, that infuriated me more than anything. She texts like it's nothing after all I've done for her. Her letter was brief and almost icy. I'm really let down by your handling of things. I stared at your message for a long time, not sure how to even start to reply. You seemed more understanding, Knowledge. She believed I should be the one more sensitively understanding things she thought I should be understanding, since I had been helping her for 10 years, covering her car tuition and now her wedding. At last, I said, keeping it brief, I'm disappointed too, Claire, but I have done enough for you. I am not paying for a wedding. I am not attending. Good fortune with everything. That was it. She never answered. Not apologies or explanations, nothing but quiet. And really, that wounded more than I could have imagined. Though I didn't expect her to grovel. I reasoned, perhaps she would have some sort of insight, some awareness of what she had done. But no, nothing. After that, things quieted once more. Calls and SMS are no more. I suppose that was best, since they seemed to have all just deleted me from their lives. Still, it felt like I was grieving something, even with the quiet 10 years of my life, was simply gone with Jen and Claire. What future did I feel I had? That was over. I tried to re-enter my employment, reconnect with old pals, and resume some sort of schedule. Still, the house was quiet, too quiet. Perhaps it was odd not hearing Jen inquire about the grocery list or the ongoing talk about wedding preparations. One night, I ran across my friend Mark, the same man who hadn't even been invited to the wedding. At last, I was free from all the tension, but it came without emptiness. We finally settled on beer, and I told him everything that had transpired. He merely shook his head and laughed. "Man, you avoided a bullet," he said. "If they couldn't even respect you for this, imagine how things would have been down the road." He was right. Spending so much time trying to make things work with Jen and Claire, hoping they would value what I did for them someday, has been rather taxing. That never would have happened, though. That was it. They saw me as the one who paid the bills. Things stood thus. I was better off without them. Now, I didn't care to hear anything further about the wedding Claire and Jen picked. I had picked as well. If one thing I have learned from all this is that respect is not something you can purchase. I was going on with my life, and it felt amazing to finally have serenity again. People will never perceive your value, regardless matter how much you contribute. And that's okay. For the first time in many years, I felt free. I'm done trying to prove myself to people who don't care. Just peace, not more family discord or wedding drama. For me, that was also plenty. Another surprise met me just as I believed the upheaval was at last behind me on a miserable Thursday afternoon at work. I answer a call from an unrecognized number. Usually I would dismiss that, but for some reason I picked it up and supposed the other ends. Occupant, Mike. Yes, that Mike, the father of Claire, had not been around for most of her life. I was initially too shocked to speak. Even so, the man who steps in once in a blue moon is praised as a hero. The fact that he was calling me specifically still astounds me. He should at least apologize or explain why he was contacting people, I thought to myself. No, but he went in as if we were old friends. As he went on, I was able to maintain a steady tone of voice. "Listen up, dude. I need to discuss something with you, whether it's something serious or something more informal." He wasn't the one who would have abandoned Claire for a large portion of her life. "All right, what's going on?" And he hit me with it at that. He started telling me how, after leaving the ceremony, he had heard from Claire in general about my overreacting. Overreacted. I was told that I had overreacted by refusing to pay for a wedding that I had been excluded from by a guy who scarcely knew his own daughter. He went on to say, I was boiling, adding that I ought to have been the mature one and let it go. For Claire's sake. This man, who had abandoned Claire on several occasions, was now attempting to advise me on how I should have handled the situation. Then he dropped the bomb itself. I was unable to resist. When he informed me that Claire and her fiancé were struggling financially after my withdrawal and asked if I might assist with the wedding costs, I burst out laughing. The whole thing was just too absurd. This man genuinely believed that I would return and cover the cost of a wedding I had deleted simply because he asked. I finally stopped giggling and told him, I'm not going to give you a single cent. Claire and you both made choices. You want to be a father. Feel free to cover the wedding expenses yourself. The other person stayed silent for a long time, as if he didn't think I was serious. He then tried to use it to guilt trip me. Hurry up, man, we are related. It's for Claire's enjoyment. That struck a deep chord. This is family. I've been trying to have a family with Jen and Claire for 10 years. I had been there every day, supporting them, taking care of their finances, and helping out when it mattered most. Since it would be convenient for him, Mike now wants to jump in and call us family. We're not related. Lately, you haven't been here. It fits you. As a result, you are now unable to use the family card. If you want to, figure it out. Claire. I ended the call. I would want to express that it made me feel happy and powerful. However, the entire experience left me with a bad taste in my mouth. Mike's call wasn't the only thing that got me, and it was the fact that they were always trying to pull me back in. I was out even after I had made it clear. I wasn't surprised, but they still saw me as a source of income rather than a human being. A few days later, it was Claire herself who called in again. It was unbelievable to me that they were so needy that Mike came to me to plead for money. There was a part of me that thought perhaps, just possibly, she had seen the catastrophe of this whole situation and wanted to apologize. Since everything went awry, she had not communicated with me. Wishful thinking. Then as soon as I answered, she was on attack. "Why are you making things more difficult for everyone?" she begged. "Are you aware of how stressed I am as a result of you? You should have accepted it. How come you couldn't provide encouragement?" I stood there, phone in hand, just amazed. She was apparently addressing a whole other me, one who had allegedly done nothing for her in the previous decade. I was supportive, Claire, as I mentioned. I tried to speak in a steady tone. "I've been assisting you for 10 years. I've funded your college education, your vehicle, and now your wedding. However, I'm not footing the bill for a wedding that I was not invited to. It doesn't work that way." She refused to listen. She kept raving about how selfish I was and how I was in charge of everything. Since I wouldn't support a wedding where I had been excluded, she saw me as the villain. That's when I realized I had helped raise Claire, but this was not her. The individual on the other end of the phone only saw me as a means to an end. As long as I was paying, I was useful, even though it hurt more than I'd want to acknowledge. The moment I answered no, I knew immediately that I had to let go. The evil person was me. She was not seeing things from my perspective, and her thinking was not changing. "Look, Claire, I've already won by leaving the wedding. You've already made your choices. I'm done, but keep your voice steady. I want the best for you and your fiancé. You're by yourself." That was the end of it. Silent again, she hung there. For me, that was the final straw. Not a lament or an apology, just quiet. I realized that I couldn't cling to the past and hope that things would change. This chapter of my life must end, and I must go on. I really did precisely that. What do you know? I focused on my career, reconnected with friends, and worked on things that genuinely made me feel good about myself. It was a wonderful feeling. Yes, it was painful at first, but sometimes you have to let go of people who don't appreciate you. I didn't deserve to be treated like a wallet with legs. I have to start prioritizing myself. For years, I had gone above and above for those who didn't appreciate it. After that final conversation with Claire, finally, there was only silence, no calls, no books. At first, the emptiness looked strange. Only lately had 10 years of intertwined life ended. A letter without a return address arrived in the mail a few weeks later. There was a strange sense of finality, yet I wasn't exactly depressed. It felt as if I were standing on the other side of a locked door, gazing back at a life that had been taken from me before I had ever opened it. I felt awful right away. Yes, exactly. Jen did it. The usual guilt-tripping fluff was abundant in the letter. She started off by saying that while she could understand my decision to skip the wedding, she thought it was unjust to put them in a last-minute scramble. She said that I should have done it for the sake of the past and that I ought to have been more considerate of Claire's feelings, as if the years of support I had previously given her had no impact. But she didn't end there. It affected me momentarily. She attempted to make me feel awful by saying that everything that happened had caused Claire to struggle with depression, that she had been depressed ever since I broke up with her, and even that I had met up with her to talk things out and support her during this difficult period. I wanted everything to be perfect because Claire was mine. This is how I brought Claire up better. Even though I knew that if I allowed myself revert to my previous behavior, the cycle would repeat itself. They would take whatever they could and then leave me feeling taken advantage of and undervalued. I went back inside after throwing the note in the trash. However, the regret lingered for several days. I refused to allow them to drag me back into their turmoil. What if Claire is actually having difficulties? I kept asking myself, what if I shoved her too hard? Then I recalled what she had done, though. How she treated me like an ATM, excluding me from the wedding, and choose her father above me. This was not my mess to clean up. they decided what to do. A few weeks after I made mine, things began to settle down. In the meanwhile, my buddy Mark invited me to join him for a BBQ one evening. He's one of the only people who has stuck with me during all of this. I went with the idea that I could need a night out with pals, and I knew something wasn't right as soon as I arrived. There was a sense of exceptional liveliness in the air, as if everyone was waiting for me. We were all sitting around the grill cracking open beers, when Mark pulled me away with a smile on his face. I thought he was just being theatrical, so I rolled my eyes. "This will be unbelievable to you." He started to appear as though he was going to reveal the biggest rumor ever. Then, he made a comment. The wedding of Claire was called off. I almost spat my drink out. Canceled? Like completely. Trying not to laugh too much. He nodded. Yes, dude. I wasn't sure how to feel at first. It seems that everything fell apart after a major blow to Claire's fiancé's family. I thought she was doing what she was supposed to do. However, a different aspect of me kept giving back the cash and anxiety I had invested in that wedding before it failed. Mark told me what he had heard in detail. Being both happy and depressed at the same time was exceptional. After I left, Claire and Jen reportedly attempted to persuade her fiancé's parents to cover the remaining costs. However, when the parents objected, things quickly became nasty. Arguments broke out, and eventually everything fell apart. Even though I knew better, I had the urge to check in with Claire to see how she was doing. Do I need to get involved again? I'd just end up back in the same drama. And I had had enough. I really began to move on. Within the next weeks, I gave my all at work, pursued new hobbies, and spent time with friends. I wasn't living for anyone else, but for myself. In years, for the first time, I felt as though a burden I had not been known I had been carrying had been lifted when I got a text from Jen one day. I wanted to inform you that we will be departing the state. It was cooler than I expected and succinct to the point. Claire is beginning anew. I spent a lot of time reading the letter in search of my own sentiments. Part of me felt relieved. I wouldn't have to worry about running into them or dealing with their drama if they were going. Again, still another portion of me felt empty, not depressed. Exactly, more akin to a phase in my life, permanently closed. I paid no attention to the words. There is nothing left to say. It has to be that way. We were all on our way. Here I am now. Finally, I am free. Jen and Claire are not in my life. They're more money than I could have dreamed. And there was a great deal of grief. I come out stronger. Yes, sometimes. I still think about the outcome, but I've learned that certain individuals are just not worth the effort. My life is mine now. Again, even if you give them all you have and go above and beyond for them, it won't be enough if they don't see your worth. There is still silence in the home. I don't feel the need to tread carefully. I don't worry about other people's problems all the time. Finally, I can breathe and relax, and that's more than enough for me. Thus, the situation is as it is. Now there is no fear about a wedding or family conflict, just tranquility. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm precisely where I should be.